This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and today is my guest. I have a guy that's been wrestling for a long time. He's a second generation superstar, the son of the original Cuban assassin, Angel Acevedo. This is the Cuban assassin Junior, Richie Acevedo, who also goes by other names, including Rotten Ronnie, and he's an actor, and we're going to get into a lot of that today in that interview. But how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
It's funny to hear you with the West Virginia accent, looking like you do.
Yeah. Well, in West Virginia, I have what's called a dormant accent, because where I travel a lot, I pick up other accents. I do have a Southern drawl. I still speak with when I go anywhere, but people here in West Virginia think I'm from somewhere else. It's kind of funny. So.
There's already a fan on here, Daniel, one of our members, saying that you should write a book about the legacy of your family.
Well, yeah, I'd like to. My uncle wrestled too. My dad's actual brother, which I call him Uncle Popo, lives in Guanobo, Puerto Rico, and he wrestled a Cyclone Acevedo, and then my dad wrestled also. Then myself, my son does a little bit of wrestling, and my nephew does a little bit of wrestling now. So wrestling's changed so much over the years that it's kind of hard for these young guys to get their foot in the door. But they've been doing it for about almost 3 years now.
Now, the Canadian fans don't really know much about the American Cuban assassin, because I don't think he wrestled too much in Canada. Fidel Sierra, sorry. Just to be clear here, your father is the Stampede Cuban assassin that Fidel took his name from. That's correct, right?
That's correct. Yeah, Fidel was actually more known around the world than my dad, and that's because when he got permission from my dad to use the name, I think it was around 1987, 1988, he had went to the Ted Turner's WCW, and that was kind of seen worldwide. So when I tell people I'm the son of the Cuban assassin, they automatically think Fidel Sierra. Now in Canada, there's no mistake. People know who the original is. They know my dad from Stampede Wrestling, more known from Stampede Wrestling, but also from in the Maritimes from Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, and also from the Vachons Grand Prix Wrestling over in Montreal. But Dad's a complete legend in Canada. I don't think he even realized how big of a legend he really is.
Yeah, I remember I wrestled on one show he was on. Ross Hart promoted it. It was just a random spot show in Calgary in the early 2000s. And for some reason, he was on the show. That was the only Stampede show he did during the era I was there. I know he was there in the late 90s too, but he looked pretty much the same in the early 2000s as he always did. He's one of those guys that never really looked that young, but when he aged, he didn't really show his age that much.
Yeah, Dad's going to be turning 80 years old here in another week. He's going to be 80 years old, and he still moves around pretty good. I mean, he's had some health issues in the past here. He had a stroke not a few years ago, which was kind of scary, but he's doing really well now, doing pretty good. I wrestled myself back in 2000 for Calgary Stampede Wrestling when it was called WOW, World Organization of Wrestling, Stampede Wrestling. Ross Hart and Bruce and Diana were the ones taking care of that. And Ross brought me in 2000, but I had to leave to come back home. I had a pregnant wife with my son at that time. She was pregnant, and I had to come back home and take care of a bunch of bills and everything. I can't just leave her hanging there. But yeah, I was there. I think you came in after I had left because Dad finished off with them, and I think 2003. I think they ran a couple more years after that, and then that was it. They folded and closed camp.
Yeah, and you made the good decision going back to support your family, because I'm sure even when you were there, I think they still had TV on the A channel, but the pay wouldn't have been much other than maybe a handful of bills, $20 bills at best, maybe.
Well, I won't say how much I made working for Stampede, but I will say that the Hart family did take care of me. They took care of my trans up, my trans back. They even took care of my work visa to work there, and which is a rare thing to have a promotion take care of your work visa. And they did pay me well. I won't deny that. But I think they probably did that out of respect for Dad. I think more than anything else. But they did take care of me. I have no complaints about the Hart family. I mean, I don't know what everybody else's dealings were with them, but mine was actually a positive experience.
Well, that's great to hear. And I'm not saying that they would rip people off, but I'm saying that from the money just wasn't there, because in those days they weren't getting big crowds for whatever reason. They tried to start back up in the pavilion, but then they ended up moving to the Ogden Legion. And unfortunately,
that's where I was at, the Ogden Legion, for the TV. And I think they actually tried to start it back in 99 and 2000. But I was there in 2000. They had a couple of road guys that handled a lot of the money from the shows, which was Bob Johnson and another guy. I can't remember his name. Bob Johnson was pretty much a fair guy. The other guy, man, I tried to warn Ross that guy's pocketing some of the money. And that's why some of those checks that they have written out, because they paid in checks, some of those checks had bounced on some of the boys. But I've always went to get my money early in the morning. Me and Kurgan, it's kind of funny, me and Kurgan kind of kayfabe each other a little bit, and we wake up noticing each other's up pretty early. And I told him I'm going to get breakfast. He told me he was going to the gym, and we end up at the same bank. And we're kind of going down that line, different lines going down, hoping we get there first, because one of our checks may, take all the money out of the account, because the one road agent wouldn't put all the money in the account to take care of the boys. I mean, I warned Ross about that, but Ross, that was one of his friends, and he trusted him. But I personally seen him put money in his own pocket instead of putting it in the bank for the boys.
I see. I think by the time I was there, it was just Ross and Bob Johnson and Bruce. So whoever that was probably gone by that time. Mauro Ranello was commentating Stampede back then. Are you surprised that he went on to be a big MMA and boxing commentator and work for WWE?
No, I met Mark, and he was kind of a quiet, shy kind of guy when I met him, but he was really polite, and you can see that he had talent. I mean, the way he got into, just for Stampede Wrestling, the way he was getting into the commentary, I mean, you can tell he had talent. He had nothing but pure talent in doing that. And I think he wanted to live up to the expectations of Ed Whalen. Of course, two different people, but no, I mean, when I saw him show up in SmackDown, saw him in UFC and other sport channels, I knew he was going to make it when I first met him. I mean, he has a radio personality type of person, being a good MC and everything. So, I knew he was going to be something somewhere. I personally thought he was going to be working for TSN up there in Canada on the sports channel, the sports network you guys got up there. But he actually got better jobs and more successful in that. And I just hated the fact that he kind of got bullied by JBL there, because it's kind of something that's should be more of a kindergarten school thing. Bullying is supposed to stop in school, and you become adults, and you should be more adult like. But I'm not going to try to go into that area with JBL. I mean, and all that. But I think Mark was a great talent for Stampede and a great talent for WWE and UFC. I think he's one of the most talented sports announcers that you got today.
And I think JBL is still on good terms with the company, yet people that he bullied, such as Davey Boy Smith Jr., Renee Dupree, Joey Styles, Morrow, they're all gone. So for whatever reason, they like what he's doing, I guess, with all the bullying. But Alexander Ramos says he's from Cuban descent, and he's curious where the original idea came up with for your dad calling himself the Cuban assassin, specifically the assassin part.
Well, my dad actually was training to be he was a pro boxer first before he became a pro wrestler. And during the time when he was young, growing up, on the news, it was the Bay of the Pigs and John F. Kennedy against Fidel Castro. My dad has a similar look to Fidel Castro when he had his beard. And people took notice of that. When Dad became a wrestler, he just come up with the story that he's the hitman for Fidel Castro, the Cuban assassin. And he's sent out to the wrestling world to conquer the wrestling world on behalf of Fidel Castro in Cuba. And it basically is just something that was in the headlines still, even though my dad started his career back in 1968. It was just still in the headlines. I mean, people still knew John F. Kennedy's assassination and the Bay of the Pigs, and that's still relevant. That was news back then. So what was more common in news, they would try to play out on television, especially in wrestling. And Dad just came up with the Cuban assassin, and even said at times he was the personal bodyguard of Fidel Castro. Now, of course, that was all just a work. It was just all storytelling to create a character. But it got over, and Dad did really well with the character, and he made a very memorable character, in my own personal opinion.
Jamari 4 wants to know if you ever wrestled for WWF or WCW.
I never got to really wrestle for WWF back in the day and WCW, but I have dealt with the agents. I have worked with people they had taken in those companies, Renee Dupree being one of those people, another one. I never got to work with Harry or TJ Wilson, or people know him as Tyson Kidd and David Boy Smith Jr. When I was there in 2000, they were young, skinny kids, trying to get their foot in the door. But Renee, when he was the same age, 15, he was already a Hulk. I mean, he was already a bodybuilder and a big old boy. I also worked with Eddie Colon Primo in World Wrestling Council Puerto Rico for Carlos Colon, which is Eddie Colon Primo. And I worked with him when he was 15. But I worked with a lot of different talents, but I had never that got taken to WWE, like Cedric Alexander and a few others. But I never got to really work for the WWF or WWE or WCW. I had dealt with agents with them, but nothing really came out of the deal. And when I was dealing with WCW, it was towards the end, and Vince had done bottom out. I was supposed to go for a tryout for WCW, but it was so disarray at that time. It was, I didn't know when it was going to ever happen. Then for WWF, I was waiting to get a tryout, but it just never happened. I had several chances. They bought WCW. They had all this amount of roster, so there was no chance to get a tryout then. Then later on, after I dealt with Kevin Kelly, I was dealing with I dealt with Mark Carenos too, but it just and Bruce, Tom Pritchard, but it just nothing ever came out in my favor to really get me in the door. I think if Vince McMahon would have ever met me during that time, since I looked identical to Dad, and he wanted Dad at one time, I think Vince would have automatically had him put me under contract. But the problem is I don't think the agents never let Vince really see me. I think he knew of me. Renee talked to him about me, but I don't think Vince McMahon himself ever personally got to see me. I never got to meet him either. So, I think if he would have met me, it probably would have been a different outcome.
Now, there's a fan on here, Chris Norman, watching on our The Hannibal TV Facebook page, where we also stream these now. He wants to know how you liked working with Tom Pritchard.
Well, I talked to Tom, and I've been on shows with Tom. And then when they released Tom Preacher a couple of times before they brought him back, he was pretty cool. Tom actually worked my dad. He worked with my dad in Don Owens, Portland, Oregon, wrestling over there. And he worked with Dad over in Japan and, other territories in the United States. Tom is a pretty cool guy. The thing is, Tom confuses me for Dad too. On a lot of occasions, he'll still call me Angel and bring up stuff they done or whatever in Japan a lot. So, but no, I never got to really work with him as far as just more negotiations, talking, trying to, stuff like that for WWF at the time when the movie was released. And, we got to be, pretty good, knowing each other pretty well on shows and everything. We never got to work each other. He's seen my work. But nothing's ever came out of it or anything like that. But, he was a pretty cool guy to really get to know.
The Guardian of Chaos wants to know if you could talk about your time as the Cuban Commandos.
Okay. My dad and Jerry Morrow were the Cuban Commandos. And when I actually started in 1989, and I started in the hood as a Super B for Renee Dupree's Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling in the Maritimes, and I came to the States. My dad and Jerry stayed in Canada, and they were still a tag team called the Cuban Commandos. I used the name the Cuban Commando, and I didn't want to try to emulate a lot of my dad. I wanted to be a different character. I was wanting to be called the Ace Richie Acevedo, but people thought I was too Ric Flair looking and too many people already doing Ric Flair. And so they told me that I needed to do what Dad's doing as a Cuban because I look so much like that. But I didn't want to steal his gimmick. So I went ahead and I would come up with the Cuban Commando, and I would be the buzz cut military style hairdo, more clean shaven. And my dad would be the more wild with the hair and the beard. So that way, when they talked about the Cuban assassin, they're talking about the father. And then when they talked about the Cuban Commando, they would talk about me. But in 1999, Renee Dupree brought me up to the Legends Tour for Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling. And I got to tag team with my dad, which was a childhood dream of mine. And then we just became the Cuban Assassins again. So I just became the Cuban Assassin after that. And my son uses the name the Cuban Commando these days, right now, when he does wrestle. But my dad and Jerry Morrow were actually the Cuban Commandos, and they didn't want to do the Cuban Assassins because it already been done, I think, and they just come up with a different name, the Cuban Commandos, since they're doing camaraderie between the island of Saint Martinique and Cuba.
Now, Mike D wants to know, what's your favorite tag team, past or present? Would it be one of your father's or someone else's?
Well, actually, my dad has always been my hero, but as away from my dad and Frank, which were the original Cuban Assassins, Frank Silverstein, I think my favorite tag team, that I liked when I was growing up watching wrestling on TV. And we saw a lot of Crockett in this area in that time. So the Rock and Roll Express and the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express were the popular tag team names. And I really liked the Rock and Roll Express because they were, they just had a lot of energy about them. The Road Warriors were different. And I think the Road Warriors upped the game in wrestling because they were these two big, powerful men. And the Midnight Express, I thought, were the greatest tag team villains in wrestling history, even though they got to be babyface a few times. But I thought they were the greatest villains of tag team wrestling. But my favorite tag team that I seen in the 70s, before the Rock and Roll Express came out, was the Briscoe brothers. I always liked the more wrestling oriented style, and both of them were actual amateur wrestlers. And I just thought they looked more realistic as a wrestling team. And I always liked the Briscoe brothers.
David 2099 wants to know any stories about working in Puerto Rico.
Oh Lord. Besides getting screwed out of your pay. So, well, I could tell you this. I found out that in Puerto Rico, those fans really believe wrestling more than I've ever seen in a lot of places. I remember wrestling Eddie Colon Primo in a match, and I remember seeing some police detain a guy, and he was really drunk. And they came back in the locker room and asked me if I wanted to press charges on the guy. And I didn't understand what they was talking about, why I want to press charges for. And they put up this really big, long knife about this long. If he would have got up to the ring and stabbed me, I'd probably be dead. But, man, those people, they spat on me. They threw bottles and everything at me. They really believed into the character. And I mean, it is a rough type of atmosphere, but I loved it. I loved because it was an easy crowd to work and to perform. And the baby faces, they sold like you wouldn't believe in Puerto Rico. I mean, the whole thing was for them to sell, and, for the heel, and then make their big comeback. And then you sell and take whatever, and whatever the finish is, whatever it be, whoever goes over, goes over. But, yeah, I mean, that was pretty dangerous being in Puerto Rico. I mean, I had to have police had to follow me sometimes about 5 miles if I can get 5 miles in the traffic down to away from the arena. They had to follow me a little bit, make sure none of the fans followed me. So my life was pretty much at risk because they believed the character. I mean, and they really. I really was over as a big time heel down there. I could have held them up, but I just don't believe in holding up people for pay, even though they screw me out of money, and they still owe me money to this day. But they owe my dad money too, as well too. So,
yeah, they owe me money as well. And one of my regrets is that I didn't just take the tag team title home, but I did it the proper way and dropped it before I left when they owed me so much that I knew I would never get it back. I was worried that it would affect my chances of getting in WWE, but looking back, I wish I would have just kept it because they were known for doing that, but I'm surprised they did that to you because in some cases with a second-generation wrestler or a wrestler who has been in WWE, they wouldn't do that to, but others they did. So I guess you were one of the unlucky ones.
Well, I think what happened is the way I perceived it, because I seen guys come down from Florida and to get on their show and actually work for free. And they put him on the show, and the guy asked if he can wear his championship belt. It was a mark for his company's, his promotion's belt, and they let him. But he did a squash match with, I think it was El Titan. Like one of the job guys down in Puerto Rico squashed that guy, and he was the champion in a non-title match, and they just sent him back home. But I realized that they had also held on certain people's airline tickets. I flew myself there and flew myself back. I already had my own round-trip airline ticket, so they couldn't hold me hostage on the airline ticket. That's why I left. I seen him hold One Man Gang's airline ticket, and he had to go to Guam. He already had bookings he had to commit to, and they intentionally held him back because, whoever's a draw for them or whoever's putting butts in seats for them, they're going to keep them there. And I realized that they do screw guys. I mean, they screw my dad out of money too. They try to keep the people there who actually are putting butts in seats for them that they're actually making money from. And that I don't know how their TV ratings go on that little island down there because it's only 2 channels or something. But people see it all over the island. I mean, you can see the whole island in one day if you want to in Puerto Rico. But it's just, I seen that they screw people. They wanted to keep they in it longer, and they if they wanted to get rid of you, they would just gotten rid of you really quick. I knew that they screwed some of their own talents there on pay, but they did they did screw me on pay there. They owe me money still to this day, and they owe my dad more than they owe me. But and my dad never received that money from them either. And what's strange is my dad grew up in Puerto Rico with Carlos and Jovica and, you know, Ray Gonzalez and Jose Gonzalez and all of them down there, you know, and Savio Vega. My dad grew up with those guys. So if they're willing to screw them, you know, their own friends, it's just, I think that it kind of like, you know, Stampede, there's shows that drew and there were shows that didn't drew. But when you're wrestling in Bayamon in the baseball field and the place is packed, you know that they made money somewhere. And you know when you start seeing these places getting packed. When I got there wasn't, you know, the arenas would be semi-full or sometimes half full. And then after about 3 weeks, then all of a sudden everywhere was going, they were packed. And I'm not trying to put myself over, but they hadn't seen someone like me, and I was still doing the Bruiser Brody kind of stomp, and I really got over really quick. And I knew Ray Gonzalez didn't like it because he couldn't follow me, and he kept telling me, do less, don't do this, don't do that, and I'm trying to, you know, appease him. And the less I did, the more over I got, and so Ray had to go on and defend his title before me. They wasn't going to put their belt on me, but they had me go after him. And I mean, and when the match was over, I had to hurry up and grab my gear because in some of those arenas, they didn't clean afterwards. They just lock up and clean the next morning. And I had to hurry and go my gear and grab my gear and get in the car and head on towards my uncle's house where I was staying at to go home and shower. And depending how bad the traffic is, depending how long you're going to get to getting home. I mean, traffic down there is one of the worst places I've ever seen in the world for traffic besides Toronto, Canada.
Yeah, I would fully agree with you for traffic in both Puerto Rico and Toronto. That's one of the reasons I really don't like Toronto. It can take you 2.5 hours to cross the city. If, for instance,
Yes.
you have to go to Hamilton, which is in between Toronto from where I live in Ottawa, it's just brutal, and it can be brutal on a weekend. But Puerto Rico, I remember, you can be stuck not moving forever, and people just keep blasting their horns, and it does nothing. It can give you a big headache. David wants to know your most memorable feuds.
Oh my gosh. I have a list of those. Man, let me tell you something. I had big time feuds with the Dupree brothers, both Renee and Jeff over in the Maritimes. Probably one of my favorites. I actually got to wrestle my dad under the hood of Satanicus, which was another feud over in Stampede Wrestling, which is actually supposed to be part of an angle that Bruce shot down because Davey Boy Smith come in to work with Harry. And he didn't want two father and son storylines going on at the same time, although Davey Boy was coming to help his son Harry, and I was going to be turning against my dad when the mask come off to reveal me. But it got shot down by Bruce. I had some really good feuds with Brian Logan. I don't know if a lot of people know who Brian Logan is, but I had some really good feuds with him. He and I are you know, he raised here in West Virginia and went to school together, and you know, it's more of a kind of competition. He was raised in Fayetteville. I was raised in Oak Hill, so it was kind of like a Fayetteville Pirates versus the Oak Hill Red Devils kind of thing for us. So it really made it more competitive. I had really good feuds with another kid named Chad Cross, who was tremendous. Mikey Dunn in Tullahoma, Tennessee. Had great feud with him. I had a good feud with the Nomad up here in Oak Hill, West Virginia, that was going on for a while. Jack Miller. Jack Miller and I were married together for a long period of time. Johnny Blast here. He and I were married together for a long time. In Puerto Rico, I seemed like I didn't have, they really had me going against a guy down there. I think his name was called Chris Grant, and they had him saying he was an Indian, but he didn't look or dress or anything like an Indian, but had some real good matches with him, but kind of sort of semi-fused storyline with him. They had down Puerto Rico, but I had a feud with Gypsy Joe, the hardcore legend himself, down in Tennessee, which was a lot of fun working with Joe. Here in Oak Hill, he was called Gene Madrid, but everywhere else around the world, he was Gypsy Joe. And but I think my most memorable feud with me, and that's because it's personal, is me against my dad when I was under the hood of Satanicus, because my dad didn't take it easy on me. And back in the day when I started, it was a different type of wrestling. I mean, they just beat the crap out of you. They didn't care, if they hurt you or not. My dad did not hold back, and I didn't hold back either once he started laying them on me, so I laid them back on him. But that's one of my favorite feuds, was going against Mom and Dad when I was under the hood of Satanicus for Stampede Wrestling.
Now, Tyson Page wants to know if you ever worked with Matt Bourne.
I never got to work with Matt Bourne. I do believe my dad had worked with Matt Bourne. I never got to work with Matt Bourne. I had crossed and been on shows Matt Bourne had been on before he died. But I never got to work with him. I would have loved to work with Matt Bourne. Of course, I imagined that the match would have been the same as most of them. You pretty much got the crap beat out of you. Matt Bourne was one of those type of guys that was like Buzz Sawyer. I never got to work Buzz Sawyer either. Although I did work with his son, Brent Sawyer. Brent Sawyer. I got to work with him over in Kentucky, I think it was, on a show one time. I only got to work him once. I didn't get to work him no more than that. But Matt Bourne, I wish I could have worked him. I would have loved to work that guy.
There's a fan on here that wants to know your thoughts on the Tolos Brothers, who I think were before your time.
Tolos Brothers, my dad would work with the Tolos Brothers, not me. My dad had worked with them. Because they worked up there for Vern Gagne's promotion, AWA. And AWA and Stampede would have these crossover shows over the border there, Montana and those states up there, where AWA and Stampede were close to the border. But I never got to work Tolos. I would have, that's another guy. A lot of these old-time legends, definitely, I would have loved to work any of those guys in a heartbeat, because those guys – that's what wrestling was about to me. And I'm not saying wrestling today isn't wrestling. It is what it is. Wrestling changes with the time. But I would definitely, any old school guy, I would always love to get in the ring with, especially a John Tolos.
Now, there's a story in Bret Hart's book about your dad supposedly getting into some sort of fight with Bad News Brown at a WWE taping when they were going to bring your dad in and I guess give him a regular job in WWE. Could I get your version of what happened there?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what happened there. My dad told me exactly what happened on it. What happened is it was basically Bad News supposedly got word that my stepmother, Pat, had said something to his wife. And I think Mike Shaw, Moccasin, instigated it towards Bad News, got Bad News hot. He went to go talk to Dad and wanted to talk to my mom, my stepmother. And my dad was pretty much like, what do you got to talk to her about? And he says, I want to talk to her. And Dad said, well, whatever you can say to her, you can just tell me. And Bad News said, no, I want to talk to her. Dad said, no, you're not going to talk to my wife. And then all of a sudden, Bad News judo chopped Dad in the throat. Well, my dad, being a kid in Puerto Rico, raised in the streets, they carried knives. And so my dad pulled a knife out and cut Bad News. And then Bad News pulled a knife out and cut my dad. And they ended up in basically a knife fight in the parking lot. The boys had to pull them apart. That's what that whole thing was about. It was supposedly, my stepmother supposedly said something which wasn't true. I asked my stepmother about it before she passed away when I was up there in Stampede and Can-Am Wrestling Federation. I asked her about it, and I believe her. She never said nothing. She's not that kind of woman, that would say something, about somebody and not. If she didn't like you, she would tell you, but she was the kind of person that liked everybody. And that's what basically was over. And Vince wanted to bring Dad in, and he was using him on the house shows in the dark matches too on TV, because he wanted to bring him in to face Hulk Hogan and be one of the opponents for Hulk Hogan. But when that happened, Dad told Vince that he wasn't going to, he didn't, no thanks. He wasn't going to go. And then Vince, told him that he'll take care of whatever the problem was. And pretty much Vince just got rid of Bad News. And that caused the heat to be more on between Dad and Bad News Brown, Bad News Allen in Canada. And so, Dad just said, he just wasn't going to go because, he didn't want Vince to get rid of Bad News either. And it was that heat stood until 2000. And when I was in the hallway to Ogden Legion there on TV taping, and Bad News was the other host of the commentary with Mark, and he come out and he saw me. His eyes got real big when he saw me because I look identical to Dad, and I had the Satanicus mask off. And so I was like, man, I don't want to be in the middle of this. So I just went straight to him, and the boys followed me. I guess they thought it was going to be a fight. I wasn't going for no fight. And I just went to Bad News and I said, I just want to thank you, sir, and introduce myself. I'm Richie Acevedo, Angel's son. I just want to thank you for what you've done for the business, for the boys. And I just want you to know whatever heat's between you and Dad is between you and Dad. I'm a totally different man. I'm just here to work, and I'm not here to be any problems for you. And he's like, no, man, I'm glad you come to talk to me. He goes, how's your dad doing? I said, he's doing good. He goes, no, man, I think you're a great wrestler. No heat, brother. It's all done. He goes, you should have your dad come down sometime to the show. So I talked to Dad, and Dad came down, and he was kind of leery, but him and Bad News went off, and I was getting worried myself. And I went and looked, and on the pub side of the Ogden Legion there, Dad and Bad News over there having drinks and laughing and like nothing ever happened. So the heat was gone. And, but that's what that was all about. It was supposedly over something my stepmother's supposed to said about Bad News' wife, but that never happened. That's just something supposedly Moccasin instigated. I don't know the situation, and he's not here to really ask that question to, but that's the version I got from my dad.
So if it wasn't for that WWE altercation they had, your dad probably would have had more of a run there.
Oh, my dad would have gotten a run probably with Hogan. But I think during that time when Vince brought Dad in, he just acquired the Ultimate Warrior at that time. And I think they were starting to push Brett, and Brett's career was getting ready to take off. So he would have either been a feud with Hogan or Brett, definitely, which he already worked Brett, from Stampede Wrestling. So it would have made more sense for me if I was Vince to have him in a feud with Brett more than Hogan. Hogan's a tall guy, and having a short guy like me and my dad to really be antagonist. I mean, for a big man, this is, but Hogan had feuds with short people before too. So I imagine he would have got to have a good run. I think Dad probably would have done well working for Vince if given that opportunity.
Screaming Baboon, one of our members here at the Hannibal TV, wants to know if you ever met Tommy Rich.
Oh, actually, that's funny. I have met Wildfire Tommy Rich, and I've wrestled Wildfire Tommy Rich on several occasions. I've wrestled him just a couple of years ago in Beckley, West Virginia, in a parking lot of Buffalo Wild Wings on the show they had there in a tag match with my son and my nephew. And he tagged with Richie Rich and another student. We threw another greenhorn that was just training. That was his first day training, and I just threw the Super B gimmick on and just let him get in, a couple punches on him, and put him back out, and then just finished the match. But I love Tommy Rich. He's one really good guy, really good friend, and really enjoyed having the matches with him. He's a really easy guy to work.
Someone wants to know if you ever worked Mike Hughes in the Maritimes.
That's funny. Oh, Hangman Hughes, or Cowboy Mike Hughes, spelled with a K. Mike and I have wrestled, oh my gosh, the 99 Legends Tour. I've wrestled him so many times. on that tour. And he put me over so many times. And then I finally got to put him over towards the end in North Sydney. And then his, and I think it was his hometown of PEI, Prince Edward Island. But yeah, Mike and I, man, had some really good matches. I had nothing but a lot of respect for Mike Hughes and all those guys up there, you know. Joey Legend was on that tour. Peter Smith was on that tour. Of course, Renee Dupree was on that tour. But Mike and I, man, we had some killer matches. And I think our best match was in Berwick, Nova Scotia. And I should have went ahead and just put him over, even though my dad was the booker and Emil, you know, didn't want him to go over because that was our best match. And I thought, you know, we've already wrestled there so many times. He should have went over, you know, at least, you know, he should have went over. If we worked the same towns 4 or 5 times, and I'm going over, he needs to go over at some point. And, but yeah, Mike and I really, you know, had some I have fond memories with Mike. Mike's one of my good friends. And I like to, you know, pick on him, rib him. I keep calling him when he's around. I call him Mark instead of Mike. And that's kind of a rib. He knows it's a rib because I'm calling him a Mark. But no, Mike Hughes is a heck of a talent, and I'm grateful he didn't kill me during those days because, you know, he's a really strong guy. Even when he was younger, he was strong. I mean, he was really humble guy, and I you know, I think the world of him and Sherry and all those guys up there. But Mike was one of those guys that put me over like you wouldn't believe in Canada.
Now, Renee Dupree, of course, is a former Great North Wrestling Canadian champion. He's known pretty well on this channel. Any memories of him other than you mentioned earlier that he was already huge in his teenager years? I think he was actually a bodybuilding champion before he was even 18.
He was out. Yeah, a lot of memories. I've known Renee since he was 5 years old. I met him when I started my wrestling in 1989. And I took him to the canteen. We call it concession stand, but there in Canada, they call it the canteen. And I bought him a soda and went back to the locker room. My dad saw me buy him a soda. And he says, I see you buy Renee something to drink. I said, yeah. He was thirsty. And he asked me if I gave him something to drink. So I bought him something to drink. And Dad said, you might be careful. You may be working for him someday. And that was a true statement. You know, I wouldn't see Renee until 10 years later when he's 15 years old and he was in bodybuilding as a Hulk. Heck, Renee's the youngest bodybuilding champion in Canada's history. You know, at the age of 17, he was a bodybuilding champion. And in that same week, he graduated from high school. He was a bodybuilding champion in Canada, and he got contracted by WWE. And he was one of the young people to be contracted by WWE. And but I tell you one good memory. And I'm sure Renee won't like it, me sharing this, but I'm going to anyway. I pulled a good rib on him. Renee had this bad habit in the locker room. And in some of the arenas, they had locker rooms that we conjoined together, but we still came out separately and dressed in separate locker rooms because Emil was all about kayfabe. But, you know, you can walk in the back towards each locker room without anybody knowing about it. But I get back on some of the shows, and Renee would just throw his gear wherever. Like, you know, it was his bedroom or something, you know, like a typical teenage kid. I pulled his trunks up out of my gear bag, and I was like, what the heck are these doing in my gear bag? I don't want these nasty trunks in my gear bag. So I figured I'd teach him a lesson. So I turned the trunks inside out, and they had that oily, icy hot body rub. I saturated the crotch of that trunks with that icy hot, oily body rub. I saturated the thing. I don't know how he didn't smell it, but I guess where he put the oily hot on his body, you know, all the time, he never really thought about the smell. And he put those trunks on, and we had to do a 30-minute Broadway match. And the late Frank Parker, the referee, refereed this match. And I'm sitting there holding him down in the rest hold, and he's sitting there shivering. He's like, fuck. And I was like, what? He goes, take it home. And I was like, Renee, we can't. We're supposed to do a 30-minute Broadway. We're going to do a 30-minute Broadway just like your dad asked. And I made him stay in that ring, and then he shot me into a Boston Crab, literally shot me into a Boston Crab for the last 2-3 minutes, and he's shivering me back and forth. because his crotch was burning for that icy hot. And then after the bell rings, he just dives through the ropes and takes off running, darts straight to the back of the locker room. I come back in the locker room, and he's got his trunks pulled down. And he's sitting on the sink, splashing cold water in his crotch to get that icy hot off his crotch. And then he's like, want to know who did it to him? And I pointed at the referee. I said, well, Frank's the practical joker, but it was me who did it. And Renee found out about it years later that it was me who pulled the rib on him. But I did that because I kept finding his trunks in my gear bag. He just throw his gear all over the place, boot over here, boot over there. I don't know how he kept track of his gear during that time, but yeah, I pulled a good rib on Renee. But Renee is one of my best friends too. He's a great guy and a great wrestler, and he takes a lot of pride in that too. So I mean, he made me look good, made me look like $1 million. I mean, you can only be as good as the guy you're in the ring with. So Renee always made me look good.
Yeah, and he's in better shape now than ever. Just won some Japanese tag team titles last year. Unfortunately, COVID slowed his career a bit so far this year because you can't travel to Japan right now, but I'm sure there's more to come with his career. You've done a lot of acting work over the years and been in some films. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I've done some acting. The person who kind of talked me into it in a way sort of was Kurgan, Robert Maé, because he was doing a lot of that. And I took acting lessons and to get involved into it because I run across a lot of different places when I wrestled, and there's wrestlers that were doing movies and stuff. And I wasn't interested during that time. I thought actors and wrestlers should be two separate things. But they're actually the same thing. And I went on to acting, did films, and I got on some big film projects like making The Mob New York for AMC, Outsiders, the TV series for WGN. I got in Creed 2. I'm in a small, scene in the beginning of Creed 2. Was in Concussion with Will Smith, did White Boy Rick with Matthew McConaughey. Those were the smaller roles. And I did DMZ last year, supposed to come out here soon, which stars Rosario Dawson and Benjamin Bratt. But I also did a lot of indie film work. You can see me in Wrestle Massacre, which is available now. You can see me in Coronavirus, Patient Zero, the anti-bullying film called The Zombie Club. You can see me in The Promise to Astrid and a movie coming out soon called Godsend. There's quite a few of them I've done with Dean Cain that's coming out too soon. And The Bridge is out, which I'm in The Bridge as well. But you can get a lot of those films from, looking on Amazon Prime, jcfilms.org, Tubi TV, all the retail websites. And then I started doing some indie film work myself, and I did The Mountaineer, which I'll be having it out to sell myself, self-distributed here soon, and Boxer versus Wrestler. And Renee Dupree was in Wrestle Massacre along with Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, Mr. USA, Tony Atlas, Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez, and the late Nikolai Volkov and the Sandman. They were all in Wrestle Massacre. And that was a lot of challenge to do that movie there. But I've been doing that for the past 6 years. The first time I ever done anything with that was actually from the 1999 Legends Tour and Atlantic Grand Prix in the Maritimes. Renee had got on to a children's sci-fi series called Lunatics, and he got me on in a part. Wildman Gary Williams is also in there, and he got me in a small role and a part on that, and that was my first time ever acting or doing anything with film. And that's when I was like, well, maybe later I'll think about it. Because it really wasn't where I was trying to go. I was trying to just do wrestling. I didn't care if I had a contract with Vince or anything. I just wanted wrestling to become my main job. That's what I really wanted. And it didn't, turn out that way, but it led me to acting again, and the opportunity presented itself, and I just went ahead and took it. And, and so far I haven't regretted it. I haven't looked back, and actually I've been having the time of my life. And since I'm getting older with wrestling, it just seems like the other choice. But I'm not in acting to be no big movie star or to make a bunch of money. I'm just doing it because I wanted to make it my mainstream work, and I've been doing a lot of it, and I just want to continue to doing that. I just love the atmosphere, love the way it comes together, and seeing the final work of all the hard work of everybody involved, and it's just a lot of fun to me.
With that crew at Wrestle Massacre, do you have any stories from behind the scenes? Because that's quite a collection of guys that have funny reputations.
Yeah, Wrestle Massacre, Nikolai Volkov scenes were done actually in his actual backyard where he lived at, and that was fun. And I'm going to tell you, I went with the script on the lines, but I had to improv the lines to fit Nikolai. Nikolai, even though he had lines, Nikolai did his own thing. That was all him, and so I had to use the lines and had to improv them to Nikolai. But it was actually easy because it was a wrestler, and I personally think wrestlers make pretty good actors. Personally, I'm not saying I'm a great actor. I'm just saying. A lot of wrestlers I've seen, Renee was a really good actor. I think I think he should be a full-time actor. I think he does really well. But like, I had to do this scene where I had to rip this woman's nipple off and Wrestle Massacre. And the director, Brad, he knows you're uncomfortable. And I'm Southern raised. I don't. I have actually tried to have as much respect for everybody as I can. And he kept doing take after take after take. And I'm like, man, how much more is it me just going to grab this woman's boob to rip her nipple off, Because we had to also do the takes where we're putting the prosthetic nipple. That poor girl, man, I left my handprints on her like bruising, and I felt bad. And I kept apologizing to her. And she told me there was no worries and this thing, but I felt bad. And then on the first day shoot, they had this one girl, and I'm trying to remember her name, Kat, something like that. But she was from Florida, and she only had a pair of boots on, was butt naked in the middle of the woods that whole entire shoot. I felt bad for her. I wanted to give her a jacket or something, a towel to cover up, but she didn't want it, and all these bugs biting. I'm half naked in my wrestling trunks myself, and I'm like, man, it's irritating me. It must be irritating her, but man, she was tough. She ran in that woods butt naked the whole entire shoot. She was butt naked. That's just something funny I thought was hilarious. People driving by and you could see a naked woman in the woods. So it was a lot of fun. I won't deny that. But meeting Will Smith and Matthew McConaughey and Sylvester Stallone, that was funny meeting them too. They and Benjamin Bratt and Rosario Dawson. I mean, and let's see, Ryan Hurst on Outsiders. He always wanted me to talk about my wrestling stories. He loved hearing the wrestling stories, and he liked that. And but they were all nice. I really had a really fun time working with them. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff a lot of goofing on that goes on behind the scenes of a movie. A lot of it. So.
What was it like meeting Sylvester Stallone, one of the heroes of a lot of people?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, he had a good memory. Actually auditioned for a role in Cleveland, Ohio for Escape Plan 2. But Stallone likes his guys taller, and I'm just too short. He liked my look, but needed me to be taller. He likes the underdog situation. And when I did Creed 2 and he happened to walk by and he stopped and he looked at me and he was like, "How you doing?" And I was like, "I'm doing pretty good, Sly." He goes, "Don't I know you?" And I was like, "Audition for Escape Plan 2. I loved your look, kid, but you need to be a little bit taller." And I was like, "You told me that in Cleveland." I said, "I appreciate the opportunity." And he was really cool. And glad to see you here, kid. I was like, I got more gray on me showing than him because he dyed his hair and everything. He's calling me a kid. I thought it was kind of cool. Dolph Lundgren was cool to me too. Tessa Thompson, that girl is a doll. I'm telling you, was so nice, and she was very friendly. The first, she talked to people and everything. She's very friendly, and she's a beer drinker, and I'm a beer drinker. And talking to Tessa Thompson about drinking beer is one of the coolest things I ever had experience from Creed 2. She's just I was like, man, she can be like one of your best friend. You wouldn't even. She treated everybody like they were like she knew them. Tessa was just really nice. Michael B. Jordan was cool. I felt bad for Felicia Rashad because when we filmed at that time, Bill Cosby was going through all that court cases, and she had to be part of that, all those court hearings and stuff. So you can see her physically being drained because she's been going, from that and to the shooting. And then Brigitte Nelson, she was cool to meet. Brigitte Nelson was pretty cool too, which is kind of a shock. I was shocked she was in the movie and knowing the history between her and Stallone. And but they didn't talk to each other. They stayed their own separate ways. But it was pretty cool. It was a really good experience.
Jonathan Hamilton wants to know, what's the biggest film you've been in? It sounds like Creed 2 might have been it.
Well, I was in Concussion with Will Smith. I would say definitely Creed 2 is probably the biggest film. And I'm only in it, like before it says Creed 2 in the very beginning. I'm holding the Ukrainian flag. I'm right there in the background with the guy that promoted us looking for looking at Victor Drago. And they let me keep that little Ukrainian flag. They let me keep the Russian flag, and they also let me keep, which I should have brought it out. I didn't really think about bringing it out. The big Drago banner. They let me keep all that. They told me take it home, don't advertise it, don't do anything until after the movie come out. And it was a lot of fun. Met a lot of friends, and and there was a lot of people. But I seen a lot of people getting busted for trying to take pictures and stuff, trying to put it out there for TMZ. Man, I didn't realize how hungry TMZ was trying to get a scoop on anything, but they are. A guy that was SAG, he was union. Not only did he get busted, but of course, all these people were going to be charged with the crime. And that guy's SAG membership is now void. He's no longer a member of SAG. I would never risk my union status for trying to get a little few $1,000s from TMZ. Not for that, but it was a really good experience. Heck, even ICE showed up there to get a legal immigrant that was on the set that was background extra, and they expedited him directly to the border. They took him away. And I'm surprised that never even made the news, but that happened there. It was fun. I think Creed 2 was the biggest movie I got to be a part of. The biggest indie movie I got to be part of was Wrestle Massacre by Brad Twigg and Fuzzy Monkey Films. Another big movie I got to be part of, it's indie film, JC Films, which is the Zombie Club, but it's it's a Dean Cain movie. It's a really good movie. You should check it out, Amazon Prime, and jcfilms.org. Then I think the biggest TV show I've been on, I think, was Outsiders on WGN, because I was a main feature background on season 2. And that was one of the best summertime jobs I ever had, was doing that. And I had, I think those were the ones. I would say Creed 2 being the biggest indie film, the kind of a tie between Wrestle Massacre and the Zombie Club. And I think the biggest TV show I've been on so far was Outsiders on WGN.
Very good. Well, congratulations on those parts. And I can only imagine what your pay would have been for Creed 2, because I was used in it too, and they didn't even use me on camera in the end. But that was the biggest payday I ever had for acting.
Let me tell you, on Creed 2, I was there for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And you only see me a brief moment, and that's from the first day of shoot. And the rest of the day, they mixed me in with the audience there, the fans, for the final fight scene. And and they had me hold the Drago banner up. But when the movie they CGI'd, you see that Drago go up and it goes around his shoulder. They actually had me hold it up, so they showed it reversed, but they CGI'd the banner for some reason in the movie. But they had me keep holding it up back and forth doing that. But yeah, I had a pretty good. I had a pretty good payday those 2 weeks working for Creed 2. That's the best pay I ever got for doing a movie, and there was a lot of overtime pay on that too. So that was one of the best payas I ever got.
Now, this guy must know you personally. Gone with Rob says, do you have a favorite Scottie Mckeever story? I'm not familiar with Scottie Mckeever, so you might have to fill us in.
Yes, Scottie Mckeever here in West Virginia. Scottie Mckeever was trained by George South and went on to wrestle. He did some matches for WCW and Smoky Mountain Wrestling as well. Scottie Mckeever passed away a few years ago, but in our personal definition, he was what we call the West Virginia wrestling legend. And in my opinion, he is the West Virginia wrestling legend. Scottie Mckeever, let me tell you something. I have driven with that guy on the road. And the whole point of me actually going with him on the road trip to shows and stuff was so because he liked to drink a lot. And the whole point was so I can be his designated driver, but I would drive for a little bit and he'll have me pull over, then he'll start driving. Next thing you know, I'm drinking. Now we're both drunk driving to these shows. And one time we get pulled over by a police officer, and this is a true story. And I'm like, oh my Lord, we're going to go to jail. And I'm trying to figure out how to hide the beer. I'm trying to find out how to get the beer smell off of us. And I tell him, Scottie, put that beer away. And the cop comes up and he asks for, his driver's license, registration, proof of insurance. And Scottie's like, hold this. And he hands him the officer the beer. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to jail. The officer just looked at him, looked at the beer, looked at him, and just poured the beer out, crushed the can, threw it in the ground, turned around, walked back to his cruiser, sped off, and left. And I couldn't believe what just happened. And Scottie just handed him the beer. And I was like, man, I'm glad that, we're lucky he didn't arrest us, man. I don't know what happened, why he did that for. And then Scottie just looks at me. He poured my beer out on the floor on the ground. Get ready to go to jail. He's worried about his beer. And, Scottie was also a really good wrestler in the ring, good worker. True worker. And a lot of boys today, a lot of wrestlers today like to call themselves a worker, and they don't have no clue. And I'm not trying to insult wrestlers today, but let me give an education lesson to a lot of the boys today. You are a wrestler, not a worker. A worker, if you want to consider yourself a worker, you shouldn't be calling your match in the back. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying that's today's wrestling, but you're a worker when you're in separate locker rooms and you practice kayfabe and you go in and you work together and you call your match and walk and talk it inside the ring. That's a worker. That's because the worker feels and feeds from the fans and knows where to go. And a worker knows how to cover if you make a mistake, knows how to cover that mistake. Today, you call your match and you screw up and you just go to the next thing, and it sticks out. But, a worker is a totally different thing. And I'm not trying to insult wrestlers today. Don't get me wrong. Wrestling today is what wrestling became, and that's what it is. But I just, that Scottie Mckeever was a worker. You walked and talked. Heck, there's times we had matches we didn't have a finish for. We just made up the finish in the match and put over whoever's supposed to win over in the match. And that's how good Scottie Mckeever was. He was that good. And that's why we call him the West Virginia wrestling legend. And he's known more in the southern area of the United States because he's traveled all over the southern region of the United States. But Scottie Mckeever was definitely one of the best guys one of the best guys I got to tag with, and one of the best guys I got to wrestle, and a lot of road stories. I love that guy, and I miss him very much. He was. I wish you could have worked him, Hannibal. You would have liked Scottie.
Sean Wheat wants to know if you've ever wrestled Chavo Guerrero, Gran Apollo, or Carlito.
No, I never worked Chavo Guerrero. When I was in Puerto Rico working for Carlos, he had let's see, he had a lot of local guys, but the concentration was on his son, which was called Carly then. He was called Carly then, and his other son Eddie, and Ray Gonzalez. His concentration was more on them than anything else. They were the names that was the stars down there, if you want to call them that. They were the names that were down there that were really the concentration effort was to push them more than anything else. I did get to be involved, a little tangle with Carlos Colon, come out to save his boys when all the hills were jumping him, and he took a shovel and he whacked me with that shovel too. Yeah, and you can tell he's an old schooler. Ain't no fake about that. He's going to whack you with that shovel, and you better be ready for it. But yeah, that was the only thing I had with Carlos. I never got to work Chavo Senior or Junior. Would have loved to. I've worked lucha style with lucha wrestlers before, and I can only imagine what I could have learned from those guys.
Now, where can fans follow you if they want to look you up on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Cuban_assassin, the actual number 2. You can get me on Facebook, Richie Acevedo. The best one to go to, because I got 2 Facebook pages, and they're almost 5,000 each. I have an actors page called Richie Acevedo, or Richie Acevedo Actor, and you should like that page. And you can also, I'm on Instagram. I think it's Richie.Acevedo on that one. So you can follow me on there. I'm also on Instagram, but I can't remember my call sign for Instagram or Snapchat, excuse me, right off the bat. But I do follow social media on my Facebook pages, on and on my Twitter. I try to on my Twitter. Not as technologically savvy as most people are, but I try to keep up to date with everything, and even on Instagram. And I try to post as much as I can of material out there. My YouTube channel, people want to follow that. That's one I'm on a lot, which is Cuban. It's actually Cuban Mano, CUBANMANO, and the actual number 2, all one word. It's Cuban Mano 2 on my YouTube channel, and there's a lot of good content on there. Me, my son, my nephew, my dad, other stuff. So you should check that out. But yeah, I try to be as social as I can on and interactive as much as I can on social media.
Very good. And I'll remind people on here again, like us on our The Hannibal TV Facebook page. We're streaming this on Facebook ad-free now, and we're also on Instagram and Twitter at The Hannibal TV. Biggs21 wants to know if you think there was a conspiracy related to the Bruiser Brody murder in Puerto Rico. You mentioned your dad wrestled there and you wrestled there. You probably worked the baseball stadium where he was killed if you worked for Carlos.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you this, from what I've seen of everything, I wasn't there when it happened. Of course, I was a kid going through high school. From what I've seen of everything and what I've studied upon it, I would say there was a conspiracy against Bruiser. You have to understand that even Jose, the guy who killed him, he's become a prisoner on that island himself. So, he did himself in. He really can't go anywhere, which is kind of sad. And, and same for, any of his family members. I would say that the Japanese mafia probably got a head out for him if he was ever to leave. It's sad all the way around, because wrestling should be left as a business point of view. But yes, I do believe that there was a conspiracy for Bruiser. Now, whether they could have saved his life, from what I understand, if they would have got him some help, but they apparently ran the show and before they even got him any kind of help. It's just sad all the way around. It really is. But my own personal opinion, from what I've studied and reviewed, I say there was a conspiracy against him due to the business dealings and everything that was in hand, and some personal dispute too on temperaments. Someone losing his temper, and anybody knows anybody that's Spanish. I mean, your three worst tempered people is a Spanishman, someone who's Spanish, someone who's French, and someone who's Italian, and someone who's Samoan. So, tempers rise, and a lot of times people don't think, but I do think it was premeditated, and I think it was a conspiracy.
Yeah, you got to remember that Brody and Invader were both baby faces at that time, I believe. So it's not like they were even wrestling each other regularly. And Carlos said in an interview after that there was no blood and they didn't know how bad it was. How could there not be any blood when he's being stabbed?
Well, you talk to Tony Atlas, he'll tell you differently. He was the guy that was there when he died. Yeah. And Tony Atlas' version, and you can see the frustration, in Tony's voice. But Tony couldn't say anything. His life was at risk, so he had to get off the island himself. But Tony Atlas was there, and there was a lot of blood. He lost. That's how Bruiser Brody died. But yeah, kind of ludicrous. How could you not see blood? There was blood everywhere. They just cleaned it up.
Yeah, and we all know the pay issues in WWC. There may have been some issues with that. But Ivan Santos wants to know, what name did you wrestle under in Puerto Rico?
They call me the Assassin. I mean, they advertised, they showed some matches of Dad from the past before they brought me in, and told everybody the truth, that I was his son and everything. But they called me, my dad was called the Mercenary down there in Puerto Rico, and they called me the Assassin down in Puerto Rico. And they gave me the loaded elbow gimmick down there, because they're still like an old school way and everything, which I really enjoyed the wrestling there. Even though the fans were dangerous, but I enjoyed the fans. It was a great experience for me as far as wrestling wise. It's just getting screwed on your pay, and you got a young kid and a wife at home. It kind of sucks. I mean, I think, like I told Carlos, you don't have to respect me, but at least respect my family. The wrestling tradition is always, I don't have to like the guy I'm in the ring with, but I'm going to respect what he's doing, because he may be providing for a family or whatever. You're supposed to always respect their family no matter what. That's supposed to be the whole motto of wrestling. We respect each other. Don't have to like each other, but we got to take care of each other. And I'm going to take care of that guy I don't like more, because I certainly don't want to have any heat with him. And I want to, protect him either way, and make sure he can come home to his family, make sure he provides for his family. And that's how I told Carlos, look, you can disrespect me all you want, but respect my family. That's all I'm asking for. I mean, and to screw me at the end, I mean, that's okay. I'm cool. It's over with now. That was back in 2001. I had no heat against Carlos. It was Javica, it was the money man that was handling that, and whatever Javica did with the money, whatever he did with it. I mean, I love Carlito and Eddie, and their sister. She was pretty cool down there too, and I love Carlos. I have a lot of respect for him. I just, wished he would have been, just look, if you ain't got enough money to pay somebody, you should tell them. You shouldn't have to beat around the bush, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out when you're down there in there's half empty houses, and all of a sudden the houses increase after 3 weeks, and they're big crowds. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that you're a part of what's helping bringing the house up. I'm not asking for more money. I'm just asking to be paid whatever the guarantee was. I didn't even hold him up for money. I could have took his belt. I mean, Conan was down there, and he had a whole envelope wad of cash that thick. And Conan just set up on this little wall thing that come out of the locker room. Just plain view sight, I could have took that money, act like never knew what happened. But I didn't do that. I didn't take his belts. I didn't hold him up. I didn't do none of that stuff. I tried to stay as respectful as I could, and I did lose my cool, and I took it out on some of the office people, and I did confront Carlos in the back, and Javica was going to try to attack me. I was going to knock the hell out of him, but everybody, held us back, and I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I'm not worried about today. I'm not bittersweet. I'm not going to hold grudges. I don't care about it no more. It's money's nothing to kill over or fight over or anything like that. So I done made up for it in other ways, more so in other ways than I ever done before in my life. So
Tony wants to know if WWC helped out any families ravaged by the Puerto Rico hurricane. I highly doubt it, and I certainly didn't hear anything about that.
No, I would say that they suffered from it. I think both WWC Puerto Rico and which is Capital Sports and IWA Puerto Rico, I think they both suffered from it. I think they would just be like any other business that suffered from that. I think they had to take care of themselves. I mean, it's bad with that hurricane, but when it hit and what happened, it's terrible. But it showed how much of a crook the governor was of Puerto Rico too. So I mean, and American aid was sent to them. The governor, whatever she was doing, or I think it was a she, just held all that food and stuff, and water, and kept it in place intentionally for some reason. I don't know why, but it just showed the true colors of the governor at that time, and that's why she's probably not the governor no more.
Yeah, very corrupt place, seemingly. Maria Davis wants to know if you ever trained any wrestlers.
Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, Renee Dupree is one of those people I helped work with. I helped polish him. I didn't train him. I helped polish him. I did train a couple of wrestlers. One of them, his name's Benny Conley. I trained him. I took Jason the Gift Kincaid under my wing. Really good wrestler, but he already had wrestling in his mind. And I trained my son. I trained my nephew. I've trained a few people, and I've worked with other people that had already been trained to help get them polished, when the term that we used, to help polish them up. And Renee was trying to work on a deal where, where he can make Atlantic Grand Prix a developmental camp for Vince. And I think Vince liked the idea, and they were gonna. The idea was if it worked, then WWE would have had me be a trainer or a coach, whatever they want to call that. These days they call them something different these days for them, but it didn't pan out the way. And Renee actually ended up leaving WWF the following couple years after that. It just didn't happen. But I trained Benny Conley. I trained, I helped polish Jason the Gift Kincaid, although he really didn't need to help polish him. That kid was a natural, and Renee Dupree was a natural. It's kind of like that saying, like a sculptor. I didn't sculpt the piece. The piece was already there. All I did was cut off the rough edges. They already were going to be wrestlers with or without me. That's just how I look at it. We're born to be wrestlers, and people are just born to do things. And I think these wrestlers are just born to be wrestlers. So, I mean, but I did train a couple people. I never have a school or anything like that. I just took them with me to shows and worked with them in the ring and stuff like that. That's basically how I did it. 'Cause I was thrown in the ring when I was trained. I wasn't smarting up to the business. They just beat the crap out of me. And then it was Ron Starr that smarted me up to the business, and Leo Burke, who gave me all the psychology, explained the psychology of everything of the business. So Ron Starr and Leo Burke were my mentors, although my dad trained me, but he was really old school and old fashioned about it. But my dad would give me advice at times too. So, but Ron Starr and Leo Burke were my mentors.
Adam G wants to know if there's anything in particular you try to instill in your son related to wrestling.
No, I just try to tell my son and my nephew both to keep it simple. That less means more. That if you want to try to do all those high spots, then do it. But think about your longevity. What's really important. If the pay is going to equal, I mean, you're going to put your body at risk. You need to get money out. And today on the independents, you're not going to get a whole lot of money, and you're going to put your body at risk. So always keep more of a character, and keep doing less and sticking to basics. And that's the only thing I've been instilling on my son and my nephew. And I'm not trying to encourage them. Like I tell them, if they don't want to wrestle, that don't do it. I certainly don't want them to feel like that they're obligated just because my dad and my uncle and myself done it. I chose to do it because I wanted to be part of it. Same reason why I'm acting. I just wanted to be a part of it. I never became a wrestler to be a superstar or to make a lot of money. I became a wrestler because I loved it and I wanted to be a part of it. The same thing with acting. It's the same thing. There's things that's more meaningful to me than money. And to be a part of something and to say, hey, I did that, I was a part of that, to me, that's a high honor. I mean, that's something that money can't buy, is the experiences you're going to have, the people you're going to meet, the friendship, the camaraderie you're going to have. You're not going to, you have to live life and you have to take those chances. I just took my chance on pro wrestling and acting. And that's what I've been doing. And I can't continue to wrestle forever. So hopefully, I'll be able to get a good last match. Never can get that good last match. I done quit 5 times and came back out, So, I mean, it's been a fun ride for me. 31 years, getting ready to go on 32 years of pro wrestling and 6 years of acting. So, and slowly transferring over to more acting. But, when that end comes, hopefully it comes and it'd be a good, memorable match, I hope.
Official one wants to say, what advice would you give people that want to break into wrestling?
Well, I would tell them the first thing they want to make sure they want to do is make sure that you're physically fit and that you have very good cardio. You want to be physically fit and you want to have good cardio. The other thing is, I think you should have some type of athletic background, whether it's football, basketball. I don't care if it's tennis. I don't count golfers as athletes. But anything, you need to have some type of athletic background. And the other thing is, I encourage people to try to further their education, to have something to fall back on. Because wrestling today is not like wrestling in the past. When I started, it was the end of the territory days, and then it was just the independents were the outlaw shows became the independents. And then you just had the international scene and independents, and then you have the big show, what they call the big show now. Didn't have big show back then. It was big shows, so they call it. It was just territories and promotions and promoters. But I think you should always keep yourself physically fit and healthy. That should be a plus regardless in life in itself. I think you should always have some type of athletic background before coming into wrestling. Even though there were other people that didn't have those backgrounds and did well with them, but they got themselves athletic. I think you should always further your education, have something to fall back on. But and look for a good wrestling school. Just don't go to one just because your friend or buddy. Shop around and find one that suits you on a wrestling school, because you got so many different wrestling styles and people train differently. And find the one that best suits you, and make sure you understand something. In my opinion, is in wrestling, if you haven't in 6 months, if you're training for 6 months and you haven't had your first match, something's wrong. I mean, you should be after 6 months of training, you should be on your own, taking your own bookings and having matches, because the only real way you can train as much as you want and practice all those moves as much as you want, but it's nothing like, honing your craft and toning your craft in front of a live audience. You need that live audience in order to really hone your craft. And while the pandemic's going, this is the time people should be training more. There are shows there, and be cautious and be safe and take your vitamins and so forth. But, really shop around for a good school. Just don't go to the first one you come to. Make sure you get all the information about the school and the individuals and all that too, because there's a lot of phonies out there. And, but there are a lot of good schools. I mean, there's more wrestling schools today than there ever been. And there's a lot of good ones too.
Now, Matt Trussell wants to know if you were ever a scout for a wrestling company.
Bruce wanted me to do a scout for the Hart Brothers University for his school. And basically what the idea was, he wanted me to find wrestlers who are already trained and wanted me to refer them to him. Of course, they had to pay for the schooling, but it's just to have the Hart Brothers, the university have the Hart Brothers training on your resume. Just makes you look good, makes you look better. But plus you're going to learn from, Bruce. I learned from Bruce, I mean, I've learned from the Harts. I learned from the Duprees. I learned from the Colognes. You're supposed to you're supposed to take a little bit of something from everybody that you come encounter with. But yeah, I was supposed to be just an agent for Bruce and his Hart Brothers Wrestling University. The problem is that, there are a lot of good wrestlers, but when you approach them about maybe paying for a 6-week course or whatever for just to have, Bruce's name on your resume, a lot of people today is like, I don't need that. I can just go down to the Performance Center. So the Performance Center kind of killed that, because anybody can go to the Performance Center and, train.
The Performance Center hasn't produced one star yet either, because Roman Reigns was from FCW, and he was the last major star WWE has created. And you can't even say really he's the level of a John Cena or anything like that. Well,
John Cena also was trained by an actual wrestler before he went to OVW. That's the difference. Now, Roman Reigns had his family, the Samoan family. Take nothing away from that. But you're right. The Performance Center hasn't really produced any stars, but you can go to the Performance Center and train, and they, you never know. You may get lucky. You may get picked up and go into NXT training, but they send them all to the Performance Center. The ones that are going to put the NXT anyway, they send them to the Performance Center. But Performance Center just gives people a place to work out and train. But if you look, a lot of these top stars, like AJ Styles, I mean, he didn't come from no Performance Center. He didn't come from no NXT, and John Cena, before he went to OVW, he was already trained. Him and Samoa Joe trained out there, in California. But they already had the basic fundamentals of wrestling, and I know a lot of people, not a lot of people like a John Cena. I like John Cena. I think he's a good wrestler. I think he's a great wrestler. Just because of the time period, and he doesn't dress like a wrestler, he did before. I mean, but wrestling is a show, and that's what it is. It's theatrics. But Roman Reigns, I like Roman Reigns. The problem I have with Roman Reigns is that, they shove him down, just because Vince likes him, doesn't mean that's what everybody else likes. I mean, if Vince was to have a restaurant and serve steak every day, people ain't going to eat that steak. That's why you got a menu to have different things. And then your top seller is the one you're going to move on top of the menu. Well, I mean, I have no disrespect for Roman Reigns. I just think that he's just, he can't talk. I mean, he sucks at the mic. He can't talk. I think his work aptitude in the ring, well, I mean, if you want to call your match in the back and script your match out, that works for him. But, he's had some good matches, but, his main event matches at WrestleMania, they all sucked, except when, I mean, I hate to say it, they all sucked. And I just think he chokes under the pressure. I just don't think he should be the guy. I think he makes a good team player, makes a good teammate. You know, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins came from the independents, and they did really well, and they're wrestlers. You know, I just wish they would let Roman Reigns go and actually, you know, do something with his family, which I think they're doing that now, but it's kind of a little bit late. And doing it during the COVID, where you add in your own sounds in the arena and all that, and right now, you know, and I do agree. I think he makes a better heel than he does a baby face any day. He should have been heel a long time. He should have been heel the whole entire time. Heck, you know, you don't have to be babyface to be the face of the company. I mean, it's a shame, and I'm sure you can agree, Hannibal. It's a shame, you know, and I'm not trying to put down or seem chauvinistic. It's a shame when a woman becomes that the face of the company, and you're supposed to be the face of the company. But, you know, of all the people, you know, Becky Lynch went up there and took that spot, stole it right out from him, you know. And hopefully she'll get that run back again, you know. But heck, if I was her, I wouldn't come back. I'd just go do movies or something. She's done been number one. You can only be number one for so long and let someone else have it. So.
Yeah. Someone's asking if you have any stories about Ron Starr, another legend in Canadian wrestling.
Man, I tell you, when Ron Starr smarted me up, that's the best story I got for him. That man, and I seen this guy headbutt a guy and knock him out and broke his nose. The guy spat on him and he just headbutted him, knocked him straight out, but broke his nose. And I seen him go crazy on a green guy and take his singlet and try to strangle him with it. And then the boys had to come out and stop it, you know. So I don't think he really would have killed him, but I mean, it was a frightening thing, but he frightened me. And I guess he got tired to see me, you know, just getting my ass whipped every day by Eddie Watts. I mean, I just go out. My dad never smarted me up. I was, you know, going out there. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing or anything. I just knew the basic fundamentals of a collar tie up and side headlock. Next thing I know, I mean, he's just doing whatever he wants to me, you know. And then Ron Starr, he one time in Antigonish in New Brunswick, and the locker rooms are separate, but they got the same hallway entrance to go out to the hockey rink there. And I'm sitting there on one side, and I hear someone say, Richie, and Ron's even got his hand covered up like this over his face. He's like, Richie. And I look and say, yeah. And he goes, when you're out there, I want you to hit him as hard as you can. And I mean, hit him. And I was like, yeah, right. You know, I'm getting my ass whipped. I don't want to make you mad. And then Ron Starr goes, if you don't hit him, when you get back here, I'm going to kick your ass. My eyes got big. I mean, I'm already terrified of the guy, you know. And I'm like, oh, my Lord, this guy's serious. I got in the ring. I'm with Eddie Watts, and Watts is just beating the hell out of me. Same old routine. I look over in that corner, and there's Ron Starr with his arms crossed. He shakes his head no. I'm like, oh, crap. You know, what am I going to do? And I'm start thinking, well, I'm taking an ass whipping now. What's a little bit more of an ass whipping from Eddie Watts? So I just reached up, I hit him in his gut as hard as I could. And he bent over and his eyes got big. And I was like, well, here it comes. Next thing you know, Eddie starts saying, that's it. Hit me again. Do it again. Do it again. And I'm punching him and he's selling it like crazy. You know, and he's talking to me for the first time, and he's backing up as each time I'm hitting him. Then he grabs my arm while he's and pulls me into the corner, and he tells me, he goes, shoot me off, give me a backdrop. And I shoot him off, and I give him a backdrop, and he's selling it like you wouldn't believe. And I see his arm out, which is a signal to grab his arm, so I take him in the arm bar. I look over, and then Ron Starr's not gone no more. And now it's just me and Eddie. And then Eddie's talking to me. And then I come in the back in the locker room. My dad's sitting there. My dad's like, And mind you, my dad, the first match I had, my dad goes, you know, he says, Richie, this is the big leagues. This is the major leagues. It's the real world. You're on your own, and I'm not going to watch. And one of the first things Eddie ever told me in the ring when my first match is like, I don't care who your daddy is, and I'm not going to be easy. And that's what he told me. I didn't know what he meant by that. He beat the crap out of me. But when I came back and Dad's like, I was like, what? And he's like, it's about fucking time. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, I was wondering when you're going to let someone just keep beating the hell out of you, when you're going to start fighting back. That's when I realized is your baby face, you're supposed to sell, but you got to do something. If you're not going to fight back, then you're no use to them. And that's when Ron Starr smarted me up. And next thing you know, I kept doing more, listening more and getting more advice. That's when Leo Burke would come to me, tell me, don't do this, you should do that, and don't do that. And that's when Buddy Wayne Gillis was leaving, and Mill offered me his spot on the show because he needed a baby face to fill. And that's when things started. I started realizing what this business is about. It's you got to work together and make each other look good. But thanks to Ron Starr smarting me up, and Eddie Watts, thanks to him too, man. I have nothing but respect for him. I'm sure he could have done a lot worse to me out there, but he did take care of me. I mean, he beat the crap out of me, but he didn't kill me. And and Leo Burke, one of the best minds of wrestling ever, in my opinion. And Eddie Watts, one of the best wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. He's one of the guys I'd never understood that Vince never took, or whoever at that time, Crockett's, Ted Turner at that time, I think. Yeah, Ted Turner at that time. Because Eddie Watts was a great wrestler. I've seen him and the late Buddy Wayne Gillis have some tremendous matches that I thought was phenomenal that never was on film. All your best and greatest matches are the ones that's never on film. That's kind of sad, but yeah, that's Ron Starr was one of my best mentors, and I had nothing but respect for the guy. I told him that before he passed away.
Tony De La Monte wants to know, how was wrestling in IWE in Japan?
Well, IWE in Japan, in wrestling, now, I never went to Japan to wrestle. My dad went to Japan. I have the athletic workout suits they give you and everything, but I have worked Japanese wrestlers. And in Japan, and this comes from my dad and everybody else, it's a work shoot relationship out there. A majority of them, they're gonna work with you, but you got to keep your eyes on them because they're gonna shoot on you too. It's a work shoot situation. Which one thing I give the Bruce Hart and them, he does train the boys on how to do a work shoot type of wrestling, because a lot of the old Stampede stuff is more of a work shoot type of situation, and that's because they were going to Japan all the time. But I do know it's more of a work shoot thing. But the IWE, the International Wrestling, I thought that was stand for International Wrestling Enterprise, is like a company that's sponsored All Japan and All Japan Pro Wrestling and all them out there, IWGP and all that. But I particularly myself never got to go and wrestle in Japan. My dad wrestled in Japan, but all the stories he told me was, he had some good stories. Now Tom Pritchard wrestled over there, and that's why I said Tom would confuse me with my dad. And that's where people easily confuse me with Dad, because I look so much like him. It's easy to think that I'm my dad, and so. But no, I do know when I worked Japanese, and I even asked the Japanese wrestlers when I worked them if we could do it like they do it in Japan, and they're really respectful in Japan. The wrestlers are, especially when they come here. But when you go there, it is a sport. It is a legitimate sport to those people out there, and they will shoot on you at any given time. So you have to be cautious and be ready for it. And they're good. They're real good. The Japanese are really good at doing that too. So I know that the Japanese wrestlers I've wrestled, really good wrestlers.
Rec 46 says he's from the UK. I know it was your dad that worked with Honky Tonk Man, but did you ever have any run-ins with him over the years?
Yes, I've worked on shows with Honky Tonk Wayne Ferris, I ran on the show there, and he met me and everything, and he was really complimentary and really nice to me. He and my dad, were the tag team champions in Stampede Wrestling. Um, I'm not sure how Honky Tonk came up. My dad wrestled in Memphis and was part of Jimmy Hart's family there. Him and Jack Kruger, and Jack was going as the Iranian assassin. Dad was the Cuban assassin, and they, I think somehow with Dad going there, somehow I don't know if Dad brought Honky Tonk up there or not, or he gave Honky Tonk the number, and Honky Tonk got up there. But I know Dad also got Danny Davis to come up there in Stampede Wrestling. Was some type of help to that, maybe to the same thing, giving a phone number. Back in those days, it was just getting a phone number, and you would call it, and you ask for, hey, you got such and such number, yeah, and you get it, and you call them and try to get booked, and send them a picture of you with your information on the back. That's how you pretty much got booked. And then when videotape came around, then you send them a videotape of your work along with your photograph, and then it's all changed now, and it's more like a Hollywood production now to get onto WWE or any of those other groups. But yeah, Honky Tonk was pretty cool with me. I remember Virgil was there too, and he said I looked like Big Top Bully Busick or something like that, Big Bully Busick, and I had shaved and had the mustache and had black trunks then. I was trying to change my look a little bit, and then the promoter's like, I wonder who would work Virgil. And I said, well, I'll work anybody. I'll work Virgil. I mean, I've heard horror stories, but I ain't got no problem with that. And then Honky Tonk looks at me. He goes, nobody wants to work Virgil. He says, I know you're crazy now. But Honky Tonk was pretty cool. I like meeting him. I thought he was a real nice guy.
No one but Christ wants to know if you have any stories about Tito Santana.
I've never got to meet Tito Santana personally. I never got to meet him. Always wanted to. I always thought that Tito was kind of like those modest kind of guys, the wrestling, because he's a school teacher, and but he's another guy, that got into wrestling and got a big break there with Vince, and got to go to WCW, make a little bit of WCW money. But today, I haven't really run across him on shows or anything. I always wanted to. I mean, there was shows I was supposed to have been booked for, and something happened where I never got to make it to a show where Tito was advertised on. Might have been one of those times I had a concussion, and I just got a concussion. I couldn't wrestle for a while because the same thing happened with me with Sergeant Slaughter to do a show, and I was supposed to work Sergeant Slaughter after working Hacksaw Jim Duggan, but I had gotten a concussion, and there were some shows I couldn't miss, and I believe Tito Santana was on one of those shows, and I just never got the opportunity. I would love to have met him. I would love to actually, even today, I would love to work him. I could give him a real easy match today.
Well, I did interview him last year, and he's still wrestling, so you never know, it could happen.
Oh, yeah, I would love to. I would have loved to get in the ring with you, Hannibal. I've seen your work, and I would have loved the opportunity to get the chance to work with you too. I mean, it's been brutal, but I would have. One thing I do good is taking an ass kicking. So.
Well, this is a lot easier than wrestling, so I'll stick with the reporting. Official one says you mentioned earlier you're waiting for that big match. What would that big match be for you? He said.
Oh, I guess it's just one big final match. I would say, I would like to have one big match, just something that I can be remembered for. I've done a boxer versus wrestler match. It was supposed to be one of my last matches. It didn't I came back. I wrestled my own son, and I was wanting to set up the premises to where I would wrestle my son as my last match, but my son does wrestling every now and then. Sometimes he don't, so he's not really committed to it. But I'd like to just have one good, memorable. I just want my last match to be memorable, not like historic or anything, just something memorable that fans will like and appreciate for what the match is. I mean, every wrestler, a wrestling match is like a painting of an artist. It's a masterpiece. It should be a masterpiece, and I always wanted to have my Savage and Steamboat moment, that one good match, which I had a lot of those matches. Just unfortunately, those matches aren't on film. I mean, a lot of my best matches I ever had are just not on film at all anywhere. And but I like to, I would like to have one last match. If it was up to me, I would like to have a 6-man tag team match for my last match, where I can team with my son, my nephew, and that'll be it. But have it with 3 guys that are really good workers. Maybe with Renee, maybe with Jason the Gift Kincaid, and maybe Benny Conley. Maybe I ought to book a match with those 3 against me and my nephew and my son, so I can call it a good match.
Maria Davis wants to know if you think Vince is pushing Roman Reigns because he's a cousin of The Rock. You were talking about him a few minutes ago.
I think Vince is pushing Roman Reigns because in Vince McMahon's mind, Roman Reigns is a nice-looking guy. He's an attractive guy, and I'll say it. I think Vince McMahon's got a hard-on for Roman Reigns. I mean, I think that's his guy that he is in love with. I mean, I make jokes about it, but I can see Vince at every single meeting, people shooting ideas to Vince McMahon on who to push, and he's like, I like that idea. I like that idea, but I got a better one. Let's use Roman Reigns. And I could just see him doing that in the office, and I can imagine a lot of the people's frustrations with that. And I understand merchandise sales, but man, I mean, you have to understand when Becky Lynch became the man, Becky Lynch, her merchandise skyrocketed to the roof. And John Cena's merchandise still sells more than Roman Reigns. And I mean, I'm not trying to talk bad about Roman Reigns, but I think Vince McMahon really pushes Roman Reigns because he really, in his mind, he thinks Roman Reigns is the guy. And that's how I think it is. In Vince McMahon's mind, he thinks that he's selling out arenas everywhere. Mind you, that he had people walking out in arenas before when Roman Reigns match came up before. And I mean, Vince don't see it. He just, in his mind, he still sees the arena full. I mean, I feel sad because Vince McMahon obviously doesn't have it anymore on those ideas. And I'm not trying to say he should step down. I think he should step aside and let someone else help him, whoever it may be. I think he should let someone help him make those decisions on who to push, because obviously he's not seeing what everybody else is seeing. During the pandemic, you're not going to see it. He's just going to camouflage it up with fake sounds and people's images and those little LCD screens. I think Impact, Ring of Honor, and AEW's got the right idea of how to approach us during the quarantine, during the pandemic times from wrestling. But I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but I just think that Vince literally in his mind thinks that Roman Reigns is the guy. And I don't think it really has anything related to being The Rock's cousin, because, I mean, I just think that, he just really thinks he's the guy.
Now, there's someone on here that may have been one of the Can-Am promoters. I don't know, but Otto Gentile wants to know memories of working for Can-Am in Canada.
Otto Gentile, yes, one of the promoters along with Steve Gillespie and Steve Wild. Well, I can definitely say, yeah, I got a lot of memories from Can-Am Wrestling. I can go to where the mixed tag match with me and can't remember the girl that came from New York, tagged against Lucy and Wildman Williams, and I had to powerbomb Lucy. She was called Lushy's Lucy. She's LuFisto now. And I had to powerbomb her. And when I picked her up, instead of giving that paw, she's getting ready to go into one motion. And she's going to go on her neck. So I had to grab her trunks and kind of gave her a wedgie and got her up to get her look like Undertaker style power bomb to get her down to keep her from breaking her neck. And I remember the boys talking about that and Otto, but I remember Otto and Otto and I, we like to have a few drinks there, but they had these bar shows, and it's kind of hard not to drink a little bit of alcohol. And Otto's supposed to be doing this thing with this, I don't know if it was a kendo stick or something like that, and he's supposed to be whacking people with it. And Otto totally missed me, not once, but twice. He totally missed and kind of moved out of the way. And he's, and supposed to be hitting me. And then when he does hit me, it's like the weakest kendo stick shot ever. And I'm trying to keep from laughing. He was trying to keep from laughing too. Otto's a cool guy. I like Otto. I liked his gimmick. I kind of picked on him, said he, back then, not now. Back then, I thought I picked on him and said, kind of remind me of Disco Inferno. That's like, I could see him with the bell bottoms doing the dancing, but Otto was a cool guy. I really enjoyed. I remember one time at Can-Am, about the confusions with me and Dad. They was in this bar, and we had a bar show, which the bar was on the bottom floor. On the middle floor, it's a strip club, and then the top floor is a hotel. And so we're wrestling the bottom, but the stripper come out, and my dad's sitting behind in the chair there. I'm at the desk clerk, and the girl looks at me. She goes, "You're the Cuban assassin." And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "I used to watch you when I was a little kid." And she goes, "I think you're great." And she walked off, and I looked at my dad over in the chair, and the boys, Otto, all of them were sitting there, and we all start laughing. And my dad's like, he just, my dad was like, just had that look on his face, like, she didn't know who I was. My own stepbrother, Sean, when the first time I got to meet him, come over from the Maritimes, going to Can-Am Wrestling Federation. My stepbrother goes to pick me and my dad up. I never met him. I'm walking, my dad's behind me, and I'm walking. Sean comes up to me. This is my own stepbrother, gives me a hug and says, "I missed you, old man." And then he sees Dad behind me, and my dad's like, "Are you fucking serious?" It's like, and Sean looked at me. He's like, "Oh my God!" And because I looked so much like Dad, he thought I was Dad. And my own stepbrother. It's like, couldn't believe that. Now it's going to Can-Am Wrestling.
There's a fan on here that wants to know if you could tell any stories from your time in Stampede Wrestling. I know they were doing a good amount of road shows back then. They were trying anyways.
Well, yeah, they had some good road shows there. The road shows, depending where they were at, did draw some, didn't draw. The inter reservations they drew. And then, but Wavell Star made it fun for me there. They would call all the wrestlers. They would call, to come back, and Wavell was like, "How'd you like that match?" And they're like, "Oh, it's a good match if you like cheesy '80s wrestling." And they called it cheesy '80s wrestling. That's all me and Wavell did. It was like, we're just doing cheesy '80s wrestling. So we just made a moniker, and Wavell and I wanted to have the best match. So we wrestled each other. We actually, I think we did have all the best matches when me and Wavell were together on individual matches on those house shows, and then we come back, and Wavell was like, "Yeah, not bad for cheesy '80s wrestling," and then, but yeah, Wavell, I had a lot of fun with Wavell Star. He made it fun for me, and I love working with him. I also like working Red Thunder. Man, the Native Americans, all the Native American wrestlers, man, they're good. It's in their blood, man. I mean, they're really, really good at wrestling. Everyone I've ever met, I've wrestled with. I mean, there was a French Indian I wrestled over in the Maritimes, and I'm trying to remember his name. Well, he's going to kill me for not remembering his name. He's going to send me a message too. He'll always say, "I'm over," even though he's putting me over. He goes, "But I'm over," And a French-speaking Indian. That was a Native American. Excuse me. And I had a lot of fun with them, all those guys. But Wavell made it fun for me on that. Greg Pistol Pollock had interesting match with him as Satanicus, and I changed Bruce Hart's finishes a couple times on him. I didn't like to. It's just he had a good thing for starting shows off with time limit draws, and I was like, we need to do something different. It's so cookie cutter type of thing. You need to do something, change it up a bit, So I would change the matchup a bit, and Greg Pistol Pollock was one of those other guys I like working. Hot Shot Johnny Devine, I only got to really work with him once, and it was in a tag match, and I was only briefly in the ring with him. He may not remember it, but I remember it quite very well, and that's okay. That's okay, Hot Shot Johnny Devine. We know you made it to TNA and Impact and become Team Canada. I mean, it's okay. I get it. You made it to that place. I'm not gonna hold heat for people who don't remember working me. You have had so many matches, you're not gonna remember everybody. But I really enjoyed the time of Stampede. I really enjoyed the time with the Can-Am Wrestling Federation. I mean, they had a lot more bar shows and they had any reservation shows, but it was a nice, good camaraderie of young guys trying to promote wrestling. And in Canada, of all places, and Canadian wrestling fans are some of the best wrestling fans ever. And I think Canadian wrestlers are some of the best wrestlers in the world, because you guys get a mixture of cultures and wrestlers that come through there. And I think Canadians are some of the best wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. Not that I'm knocking American wrestling. I'm just saying that, I think a lot of Canadian wrestlers are really good wrestlers.
Someone on here is asking if you ever met Larry Cameron or the British Bulldogs. I mean, you were in Stampede when Davey was teaming with Harry, so you may have met him then.
Well, actually, I met both British Bulldogs. When I started in 1989 Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, which Renee Dupree was calling World Grand Prix Wrestling at that time, I met Dynamite Kid. He came over, and I met Tom, and I met him, and then I would meet Davey Boy later on at Stampede Wrestling 2000 at the Ogden Legion, and talk to him briefly, and then Diana, all of them, and I tell you, the Hart family were a really loving family. The Hart family treated me like gold, and so did the Dupree family treat me like gold. And but when I saw the Hart family, I saw them as one big loving family, and the family helping out family. They all helped out with wrestling, and the whole family did. I mean, to get my son and my nephew to help out sometimes is like pulling teeth out of an alligator's mouth. But the Hart family, man, the whole family helped. Every single one of them. That was just something to see, a nice, loving family, and helping out and doing what little they could for whatever they could. And but yeah, I mean, I met both British Bulldogs. Met them both. The other guy, I didn't catch the name of that other guy that you mentioned.
Lethal Larry Cameron, an old Stampede wrestler.
No, I never met him. I met what's his name, Hubert Gallant. I met him. Yeah. Now, he still looks young. He still looks young for his age.
Winding it down here, Official One wants to know who was the hardest hitter you ever fought.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Kurgan knocked. I got false teeth for a reason, Kurgan knocked one tooth out, and that wasn't really his fault. He's just such a tall guy, and he had me on the forearm. And he was throwing the forearm. He let go, but he had me so down the rope, just slingshotted me up, and I caught his forearm and knocked my tooth out. And the funny thing, I was in the Satanicus hood, and that's a full hood, and the tooth going around in my hood, and I'm sitting here giggling, and Kurgan's, what's so funny? And he picks me up for a side slam, and he does that. The tooth goes in my throat. Now I'm choking on my own tooth, and he slams me. Then the tooth pops out of my mouth back into my hood again, and I start laughing again. And he won what's so funny. I said, I'll tell you in the back. And then I showed him where he knocked my tooth out. And he apologized for it. And I was like, it's all right, no big deal. And then my dad was pretty a hard hitter. Eddie Watts was a hard hitter. Renee was a hard hitter. Jeff, his brother, was a hard hitter. But I'd say one of the hardest headbutts I ever took was from Gypsy Joe. That was real. There was no fake about his headbutt. That was a real headbutt. And if you wasn't prepared for it, it was coming. And I say the part that the stiffest I ever got from a forearm would be Kurgan, but that's, like I said, wasn't his fault. That was just an accident, tall guy, short guy, and the rope. But I think the hardest hit I ever took, and Emile Dupree had Yvonne Durrell, the great Yvonne Durrell, referee a boxing match in the 99 Legislature between my dad and Leo Burke. They were boxing each other. And I had to throw powder in his eyes, Yvonne Durrell's eyes. And then Yvonne Durrell just drilled back and hit me. And he really hit me. I mean, he knocked the crap out of me. And I shook my head, and then he's grabbed me in the ring. I'm sorry, Angel. He's calling me my dad's name, by the way. I'm sorry, Angel. I'm sorry, Angel. And I was like, won't you hit me harder? And that's why I said to him, you know what? He drove back and hit me as hard as he could again the second time. And I went dangling through the ropes, and I'm half knocked out. I get back in the locker room, and Yvonne comes back there, and he goes straight to my dad, apologizes to my dad. I'm sorry, Angel. I'm sorry. My dad's like, I didn't feel a thing. And I'm over here holding my jaw, or actually this side, my jaw over here, where he punched me so hard. I mean, he cocked me. I mean, for real. And then I told him, I said, won't you hit me harder? He did. He sure did. Watch what you say to Yvonne Durrell back in those days, man, because you would have got it. And, but I liked Yvonne Durrell, I mean, shame he passed away all those years ago, but he would come to the shows, and he would come back there, and he still thought I was my dad. He still called me Angel, and I would, I'd just let him call me, talk to him, and I liked him. I thought it was pretty cool meeting Yvonne Durrell.
Did you ever witness any backstage fights in any of the companies that you worked for?
Backstage fights? Oh, Lord. Yes, I had a couple of those, unfortunately. And I think I apologized to a couple of guys I had those with. One was with Luscious Lance Malinowski for Jim Hawkins promotion in West Virginia, ACCW. I think it was in Martinsville, West Virginia. We had words. It was about basically over the match where he's got the fans scared because he legitimately beat up he got mad. Everybody chanting Lance is gay, because he had that vibe, but he's not, and he had kids, and he got mad and grabbed the ring announcer there, and the ring announcer had nothing to do with it, with that. And he just put him in the ring and beat the crap out of him, and everybody got scared in the show. I went in the match after that and worked bounty hunter, and now I ain't got no heat because everybody's scared to say anything. So I went back and confronted him, and I was like, man, I don't understand what your problem is. Just kind of goes, they're just having fun. They're not really meaning it. And he's like, I got kids. I said, I don't care about if you got kids. And you're in the business where we portray characters, and the fans have interaction. And he said something. He goes, well, I'm sorry, I'm not in the league of the high and mighty Cuban assassin. Oh my gosh, my dad's not there to defend himself. And I was like, what'd you say? He goes, you heard me. I'm not in the almighty. And so I hit him. He hit me. And then we got to a scuffle, and I hit him again a couple more times, and he got down on his knees. I had a busted mouth, and he had a bloody nose out of the deal. And he got on his knees and begged me not to hit him no more and said he was sorry. And I was like, get up, man. You're embarrassing there. You're embarrassing both of us, And I was like, let it go, and walked away. Another one was with one of the Lancaster twins in Whitesville, West Virginia. That's kind of a comical thing where I did a side headlock takedown to him, and then he went to do a shoot move on me, and I grabbed his nuts. And all the boys talked about, because I grabbed his nuts to get him to loosen up. Then he started tapping out. I mean, literally started tapping out like it was a sport. And it's like, yeah, but you grab these nuts. I said, I don't care. I'm a former U.S. Marine. They taught me how to do that in the Marines. A fight's a fight. It's like, and but I since apologized to him. He does some acting too. That one of those Lancaster twins there. Um, I mean, back in those days, and I even knocked one. He's dead now, but I knocked him out in the match in XMCW. I ran into him in season 1, episode 13 of Outsiders for WGN, and he brought that up, and I apologized to him. He said, "No, you just smart me up." He goes, "I went and got trained. I wouldn't even shake his hand." I mean, I'm sure you understand too when you're dealing with agents and you're hungry, trying to get a job to, you're trying to make yourself look, believable, presentable, and any little match can cost you that opportunity. And I was hungry back then, and had a bit of an ego, thing like a lot of the guys get in wrestling. And I was, wasn't the nicest guy to deal with sometimes. I know that, but I've long since apologized to those guys. And as I'm older now, I see things a lot differently than what I used to when I was younger. But yeah, I had a few locker room brawls, not many, just a few.
I didn't even know you were in the Marines. So yeah, that's not someone you necessarily want to mess with.
Yeah, I was in the United States Marine Corps too, not long, but when Bill Clinton was president, and then he, the Russia broke apart to the Baltic states, and they just let people go, and then they had to cut back. So I was one of those people who got cut back. But I was in the Marine Corps. They taught me how to kill and fight and things you just can't put on a resume. So I don't even know why they ask for military experience on a resume. It's just ridiculous to ask for majority of the people in the military. They train you as a soldier, or as a tool. You're a tool. You're just a tool of killing. But yeah, I was in the Marine Corps, and I did good. And then some of the boxing fighting that they had there at Leatherneck Square in Paris Island, South Carolina, and the Pugil Sticks. I did good. I only failed one, which was the bridge, but I did pass all that and did really well with the boxing. My first knockout came from the Marine Corps inside of the Leatherneck Square, and putting us face to face, little small pit, and then they tell you go, and they blow a whistle, and then you're just fighting like a madman. It was my first knockout. Second knockout was the Pugil Sticks, with the running up inside the crater going down, and I just uppercut the guy with the Pugil, supposed to be your rifle, and knocked him out too. I didn't, even though we have gear on, you still can get knocked out. And I was like, man, I kind of impressed myself on that. I didn't realize that I could do that, but yeah, I mean, wrestling helped on that too. So, and I was wrestling then, and they didn't like me wrestling and doing the Cuban Commando type of thing. So, but I love wrestling. What can I say?
Now, you mentioned Leo Burke a few times. There's a fan on here that wants to know if you have any specific Leo Burke stories.
Oh, man. I got tons of Leo Burke stories, man. Leo Burke, I tell you, one good story. I remember the promoter, Emil, he had a ring truck and a van, and we was in Truro, Nova Scotia, in the motel there. And he went to go get the van and drive to the store, and he backed the van up into the ring truck. And I would rib him about that. But then years later, I think it was 2009, 2008. And me and Chad, it was 2006. Me and Chad Wick, or Chad Dick, as you know him, were a tag team for him. And I had these girls jumped in the van. We brought them back to the motel. And it's something I can't really go into what happened to the motel with those girls. But I went to take one of the girls home, and I actually backed the van up into the ring truck. Did the same thing Leo did. So. But yeah, Leo was a good guy. I mean, let me see. I remember one time I'm sitting there telling him, something where I had him he had me in the beer. I had him in the beer hug in a tag match, and he's selling. I was like, "You ready to fight back?" He goes, "Not yet, not yet. Hold back." And then all of a sudden, he starts fighting back, and then I'm sitting there going, I'm trying to put my head out and put my gut out for him to hit, and he's squinting his eyes, and he says, and he's sitting there saying, "Which one do I hit?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I can't see. I see three of you." And I was like, "Hit the one in the middle." And he's like, I was like, "Are you ribbing me?" He goes, "No, I can't see without my glasses, and you're too far away. You got to get closer to me." It's like, oh Lord, Leo was fun. He was a trip, but he was really mastermind of wrestling. I just think that Leo Burke is Canada's version of a Luthez in every single bit of the way. That's how good Leo Burke is. That's where I look at Leo Burke as the Luthez of Canada.
I think he was a bit before your time, but did you have any interaction with Johnny K9?
No, I've never had any action with Johnny Kane. I heard a lot about him, seen a lot of his work and everything. Would like to have met him. There's so many people I would have loved to have the opportunity to come across. And when I was a kid, 5 years old, I was a kid. I was my battery's burning down, 15%. When I was a kid, I had seen Andre the Giant, Tokyo Joe, Maurice Mad Dog Vachon, and those type of wrestlers. But I never really got to really get to meet a lot of them that I wanted to. Some of them met Saturday Night Wrestling here in Oak Hill, West Virginia. That was our version of Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling or Stampede Wrestling. It was Saturday Night Wrestling here, and I met wrestlers that was from this area too. But I would love to have met him. I think it would have been an honor to meet him.
Now, I know your phone's about to die, so this will be the last question from Otto, the Can-Am promoter. He wants to know if the last time you worked with your dad was when they brought you into Can-Am.
No, I got to work with him in Stampede after Can-Am. And the last time I got to work with my dad was for UWA for Chuck over in Nova Scotia. It was in Berwick, Nova Scotia at the old Berwick Arena. It was the last show there. It was me and another guy. We wrestled in the match. Guy come out. My dad had the guy come out. Then my dad come out saved, and the referee turned it to a tag team match. Then another guy came out. Then Lanny Poffo came out and turned into a 6-man tag. Me, my dad, Lanny Poffo against 3 guys there. I think it was me and Wildman Gary Williams who it was. It started off with me and Wildman, then someone else came in, and my dad, and someone else to Lanny. And that's one of the best matches, in my career. And it's not on film. And it was the last match at the Berwick Arena in Berwick, Nova Scotia, and really enjoyed, doing that show for him. And that was the last time I really got to do anything with wrestling related and tag with my dad. And that was in 2009 on that one. My last tour I did in Canada was 2014 Can-Am. I did that in 1999, and 2000 I was there in Stampede, and I wrestled Dad in Stampede on television. It's on my YouTube channel too, for the A channel too. But that was after Can-Am. But if you want to know the better matches of me and my dad was in Can-Am, because half the time we were drunk wrestling each other. I'll be honest. But we had some great matches, and Otto and Steve Gillespie, rest in peace, Steve, and Steve Wild would be over there laughing, watching me and Dad beat the crap out of each other, But it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, Can-Am. Like I said, Can-Am was like a group of wrestlers that were promoting and we really had fun. We picked on Mike McFly a lot during that tour. I don't want to bring too many embarrassing things up. I don't want somebody knocking on my door or a lawyer or something. But But we picked on Mike McFly a lot. He was cool. I like Mike. I actually liked wrestling him. I like, he's a good guy. All those guys in that group was good. Really loved them all.
Well, I thank you a lot for talking to us. It went a lot longer than probably we both expected, but you had a ton of fan questions. So thanks to the fans for all your questions. And I'll let you wrap this up, whatever you want to say to close this off.
Well, I hope people look out for me in movies and check out Wrestle Massacre, check out the Zombie Club, check out Promise to Astrid, Coronavirus Patient Zero, and there's more movies coming out. The Bridge, I'm going to be in that movie too. It's just being released for JC Films. You can get a lot of films from jcfilms.org. You can also check on Amazon Prime. You can get them at certain outlets such as Walmart and so forth, Dollar General stores. Also like to encourage people to support their local wrestling. Go support your local indie wrestling. These are the wrestlers of tomorrow. And go and support them. Check out all my social media sites. You can follow me on Twitter at Cuban_assassin, the actual number 2. You can look for me on Facebook at Richie Acevedo Actor. Please go to that one because my actual Facebook pages are almost full friends. And I hate going through the clean list. So like that, go to my Instagram, which should be Richie.Acevedo. And check my YouTube channel out. It's Cuban Mano, actual number 2, which is CUBANMANO, and the actual number 2, Cuban Mano 2. And go out and support local independent film movies, local indie wrestling. Go out and support support wrestling. I really love pro wrestling, and I want wrestling to survive. And no matter what it becomes, it is what it is. May not be my style of wrestling, but go out. I still love these people. I still love them. They're my family. And take care of yourself. Be healthy. Take care of yourself. Be safe. In these dark times, we'll get over it. We got over it 100 years ago. We'll get over it again. And God bless you all. And hopefully everybody contact me if they have any more questions. Maybe Hannibal will have me back again another day to answer more.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not